original metaphor was my mother's, which I stole from her, about the idea of our life being sort of like a stitching, an embroidery, where when you are looking at it from the back of it, all you see are little dangling pieces of thread, knots, tangles, things that don't seem to make any sense. And it's only when you turn it around that you really get to understand it. And so that started the journey for me and starts the story of May the Road Rise Up to Meet You. And I'd like to read a brief excerpt from that. This is when young Mary is in the cabin with Gertie, who has become her sort of surrogate mother. And Gertie does these stitchings. Being a slave woman, she is left with really just the scraps, whatever could be found. Sometimes it might be a little piece of silk even, but usually, you know, the cotton thread or whatever else she could get her hands on. And she would weave them into these wonderful pictures. But Mary would always watch her from her bed down on the floor by the fireplace and see Gertie, and she'd only see it from behind. And this story is one time when she asks her about the nature of that. This is written in the second person. How you know what you're doing, Gertie? You ask. Been at this for a long time, Gertie says, and starts a humming again. No, you say. I mean, how you know what you're stitching when it don't look like nothing but a bunch of threads, ain't got nothing to do with each other? All I can see is a whole bunch of scraps, red and green and black and yellow and blue and all, little bits, silk and cotton and wool and such, and just a whole mess of knots and tangles all along the back. It don't look like nothing from over here. You can't tell nothing about what you're seeing when you're laying over there, Gertie says. Can't tell nothing about nothing in this world when all you're seeing is the knots and tangles and everything going every which way, looking like a bunch of mess. How are you going to understand when you're laying there, seeing just the mess of it all, when the mess, only one part of it, no matter how it seems sometimes? Can't see how all these bits of thread be connected together, just like all the bits of your life going to be, because you ain't looking at it the way it meant to be seen. And then she smiles, not the big kind of smile what comes with laughing, but the happy, look at what I did sort of smile you give her the first evening you worked in the fields all by yourself. And then she turns around that stitching she'd been working on so you can see it straight off. And it's pretty as a picture ever was. There's a green field with flower beds and some trees that look like they're just waking up at the start of spring. And off in the distance is a nice big house, one you ain't seen before. But Gertie just made it all up in her imagination. It's got a big old porch across the front and looks like there's folks on it, colored and white folks it seems. Some sitting in chairs and some standing up too, only it's so far off that there's no faces on the folks at all. Just their little tiny bodies, like they was ants or something. And across the top of it is a sky, all the colors a rainbow ever was. And you smile, seeing such a pretty picture as this. Gertie's smiling too, bigger now than before. This here, she says, what all that mess looked like when you gets to seeing it frontways. As I said before, being 5.5 years into this process, it's a little easier for me to see it all frontways. And to see the meaning and the value in every step of it. It wasn't always that smooth, like life isn't. In fact, it really wasn't very smooth for most of it at all. But I'd like to share a little bit with you some of my journey in writing it, because I think, as I found out, the journey of these characters became reflected, through actually my journey, became reflected into these characters. The struggles that I faced. As you said before, I mean, when you go through difficult times and you're writing about people who face war and famine and slavery and starvation and so forth, it's kind of hard to get all wrapped up in your own problems. They don't seem to amount to all that much. But those little bits that I found in my experience, I tried to put them into these characters.